Hey guys, welcome to 4-Wheel Drive DIY. One of the first videos we did on this channel was how light bars are rated for watts and amps, and now we'd like to do a follow-up on this one. We don't think the original video was explained very well, so we thought we might do a follow-up to explain it all better. Now, with your light bars you generally buy on eBay or similar websites, you have two types of light bar. These are called overdriven and underdriven, and this relates to how much power is pumped through the actual LED chipsets in your light bar. What I mean by the chipset is that every single one of these little spots in the light bar is a separate chipset. Each will have its own wattage rating, and the common ones that you'll see in most light bars will be 3 watts and 5 watts. Now when I'm talking about over and underdriven chipsets, I mean that an underdriven 5 watt chipset will be powered by 3 watts of power, whereas an overdriven chipset could be a 3 watt chipset being supplied with 5 watts of power. As you can probably imagine, an underdriven light bar will be operating much more efficiently than an overdriven light bar. As you can see, there is now a light bar on screen. With this light bar, there are 6 chips in it. Now let's assume that these are 5 watt chips in the light bar. Then that gives you a rating of 30 watts. This sounds pretty simple at the moment, doesn't it? Let's try another one, as there are many ways to skin a cat, and this is how the sellers of these light bars pump up their numbers a little. Now, as 3 watt chips are cheaper than 5 watt chips, so in essence they will start with 6 3 watt chips, which should give an output of 18 watts. They then alter the chipset so that 3 watt LEDs have a 5 watt power supply. This then gives them an inflated rating of 30 watts. As you can imagine, an overdriven light bar operating at 166% of its rating isn't going to last long, but really a lot of these suppliers couldn't give a damn, and they don't really care once they have your money. We have all heard the story of the bloke on Facebook that bought his $150 52-inch light bar. It was incredibly bright when he got it. Talk of the town. Was cooking Skippy for breakfast 3 k's down the road and searing off retinas of blokes in the pub in the next town. But then, less than 6 months later, half the LEDs in it have stopped working. They're fried. The light bar barely makes enough light to roll a smoke by at the end of the bonnet, and the eBay seller has gone silent and won't talk to him. By contrast, most of the bigger brands use what is called underdriving. This helps to ensure that your LED life is prolonged well beyond what the warranty is, and this is what gives them a good brand name. Now I hear you asking, how do they do this when the majority of chips are 3 watt or 5 watt? As the best you're going to get is 30 watt if you run the LEDs at normal efficiency. Well, they don't. A lot of big companies, the ones that people claim cost your left nut to buy, they go for expensive 7 watt chips or even 10 watt chips and then underdrive them at 5 or 7 watts respectively. This can then give you outputs from the better quality bars of long lasting 30 watt and 42 watt light bars from what is actually a very small package. Now we have to move forward and look how much this will consume amp wise. Majority of people use the calculation of watts divided by volts to calculate amps. This is fine in theory. However, let's see what our results are when we take our 42 watt light bar and we divide it by 12 volts as we own a 12 volt car, and we see what happens. Well, as you can see, we end up with 3.5 amps. Considering the manufacturer had quoted less than 3 amps for this light bar, something must be wrong with what we've calculated. Most vehicles that use a 12 volt electrical system. However, if you're watching this and you have a voltmeter in the car and have watched what it sits at when you're driving, you'll notice that you'll normally sit between 13 and 14.5 volts. And if you get any higher than 14.5 volts, you have a serious issue and need to get your alternator checked out. Let's look what happens when we punch those more average and more realistic numbers into the equation. 42 watts divided by 13.5 volts is 3.111 repeating on amps. That's a bit closer to the 3 amps that was quoted by the manufacturer. Now let's take a quick look at what happens when we divide 42 watts by 14.5 volts, which is incidentally what the Cruiser actually sits at when running, especially at night. We get 2.89655 etc. amps. Now this is a lot closer to what the manufacturer is actually quoting. So as you can see, rating a light bar is an exact science, but it isn't an exact art. Some companies will do it well and some will do it very poorly. Plus it's up to you to actually check your light bar and see what it is outputting and consuming. So Exactly what it says on the packet is not necessarily what you get. I think it is also worth remembering, a lot of sellers will advertise light bars at the higher rating than what they actually send to you. For example, they quote a 10 LED light bar has 5 watt chips and an output of 50 watts. When what you actually get in the box is a bunch of 3 watt chips and a bar that's actually running at 30 watts. Another thing to remember is under Australian consumer law, you're entitled to a refund or replacement if the goods are not correctly described. So if you receive a light bar that is a very high rating and then you test it and find out it's actually drawing a lot less because they've put the wrong chips in it, then you could be entitled to a refund on your purchase from a dodgy seller. Please subscribe to the channel for future episodes where we'll actually show you how to measure the draw rate of your LED light bar. Please check out our website for some cool 4-wheel drive DIY merchandise, and feel free to click on one of the videos on screen to see what else we have, to offer.